I'll be covering tips and tricks with IPCL, initially beginning with some simple implantation and going on to certain complex scenarios. Usually this is something we inject under normal saline or BSS, and it's because it's a hydrophilic lens, it's dispensed in a sachet containing normal saline. And this is the way you place the lens in position, and it's important that the ledges of the lens go under the flanges of the uh, cartridge, and when you are putting it in place you have to press it down gently, and then there's hardly any viscoelastic that I use, and the side port incisions are made at 90 degrees to each other. As far as the main incision is concerned, which is already always temporal for me, nowadays I make a good 3 millimeter size incision, and I believe the mouth of the cartridge of this should be inside the anterior chamber, and that gives me much better control as far as the injecting the lens inside is concerned. And once you have injected it, it's possible to rotate these lenses both clockwise and anti-clockwise direction. You always inject it in front of the iris and then gently tuck it inside. Sometimes if there's excessive pupillary dilatation, it's a good idea to let out a little bit of viscoelastic. A complete removal of the viscoelastic is extremely important, and time spent on this is well spent. And that's the reason the concept of hydroimplantation is gaining ground. And of course, if you have access to digital imaging devices like this, like the Callisto or the Varion, it becomes the process much more simpler. And almost 70-75% of my cases is toric implants, because leaving behind some amount of cylinder uncorrected is not quite acceptable. And in these cases, you would find that excessive filling of the viscoelastic is again to be avoided. It's a good idea to always see a little bit of strands of the visco being there. And you must remember that the lens opening the wrong way is completely to be avoided. And just in case you find that the lens is opening the wrong way, even if 7/8 of the lens is gone, it's a good idea to withdraw the lens and then subsequently reload the lens and then implant it back. It's never a good idea to rotate the lens upside, if it is implanted upside down, to rotate it inside the anterior chamber. It can be extremely deleterious to the endothelium. Here, because of the Varion display, you can see that is the one great advantage of the IPCL, that, as was mentioned, it's custom made, and because of which each and every lens can be implanted in the 0 and 80 degrees, and there is hardly a need to go ahead and rotate these lenses. And even in extremes of power, you are able to get these lenses, and also depending upon the white to white, you can also get this in larger overall corneal diameter, which to my mind is a significant advantage. And today I've stopped using my diamond knives. I make a 3 millimeter knife, a clear cut incision. And I think this is a good idea to go with, because it helps me to have a better control over the implantation of these lenses. Nowadays, I do not dilate these eyes, because I think when you make the side port incisions or the main port incisions, the lens is open, and we have all had an occasion when sometimes you touch the anterior capsule. Obviously, in a cataract case, you can deal with that. But if it is an ICL and you IPCL, and you go ahead and touch the anterior capsule, the case is over. I purposely chosen a case where I had to use a certain amount of force to enter the anterior chamber. It's only after the incisions are made, I introduce xylocaine with the Mediatric, which allows me good dilatation. And now I use Helon as far as the in the anterior chamber, and this allows good dilatation. Especially these are usually young myopic patients, and you saw the lens being introduced. So, and the need for irrigation aspiration has also been largely done away with this, because the Helon tends to flow out, and you can see this small button over here, which should be in the leading left edge, and that's what you look for. That tells you that the lens is opening up the right way, and this is the lens being implanted behind the pupillary margin. And as you can see, as I hydrate the incisions itself, all the Helon tends to flow out in one bolus. The fact that the bolus stops coming and then subsequently there's only clear fluid coming out, that itself tells me that there's no need for any further irrigation aspiration. There have been instances where I've completely avoided doing an IA, because I'm confident that the Helon has completely come out, But suffice it to say that even if you have to do it, it's quite less in quantity, and it's easier to evacuate this completely compared to a HPMC, which we used to originally use. This is the kind of vault that you would ideally look at, which is about 500 microns, the thickness of the cornea. Sometimes you might find that the lens is somewhat displaced nasally. That's because of angle kappa. That doesn't necessarily mean the lens is decentered, so it's quite acceptable. And this is usually it's said that 250 to 750 microns of the vault is not what you aim at. Sizing has been beautifully dealt with, but suffice it to say that just because you have a lower vault, that's not an indication for explantation. This is an eye which we have followed up almost for 10 years. You have a stationary opacity like this. The vault is quite low, but still we have not done anything about it. You can see a case, this is the case which I showed you earlier. There's hardly any vault, less than just about 100 microns. And here you can see again a very low vault, but the lens is absolutely clear. So it could be anything between 100 microns to 1,000 microns. But as far as the lens is functioning well and the patient is asymptomatic, you can watch. But just in case you have a significant cataract, you must remember that the high myopes also have a greater propensity for nuclear cataracts. But if it's an anterior subcapsular cataract, these are the cases where you can blame the lens for it. And this occurs especially when you're doing phakic intraocular lenses after the age of 40 in higher powers, like more than minus 15 diopters, where there's a low vault or a low ACD. All these are risk factors as far as development of anterior subcapsular cataract is concerned. And in case you have this problem, it's reasonably easy to deal with. You have to be conscious of the fact that you do not subject the anterior chamber to too much chamber fluctuations. And essentially, I just take out one haptic. Then using the front-loading forceps gently through a 2.8 or a 3 millimeter incision, even this hydrophilic acrylic lens folds over itself, and just by a hand-over-hand maneuver, using two forceps, you can bring the lens out. And then through the same incision, you can go ahead and you can see this being demonstrated over here. Two Macpherson's forceps are used, and you can bring the lens out. And through the same incision, you complete your cataract surgery. And since this is a highly myopic eye, there's a 3-piece intraocular lens that has been implanted. In the case of high vault also, this was before the central hole came into being. You can see the iridotomy. In case the angle is not getting zipped up and if the pressure is under control, you're doing serial gonioscopy. Again, you can wait and watch these lenses. Of course, if there's a raise in intraocular pressure and the angle is closing down, you have to remove these lenses. Most often, these young individuals come up with with the rule astigmatism. Whenever it's in the range of about less than 1 diopter with the rule astigmatism, I actually shift my incision with a simple IPCL, not a toric IPCL, and then make the incision superiorly. And a 3 millimeter superior incision in my hands deals with almost a 0.5 to 0.75 diopters of astigmatism. But you must remember that this lens is not to be left behind, oriented in a vertical direction, but you have to rotate this around because the white-to-white measurement has been taken in the horizontal meridian. So you introduce the lens vertically, but rotate it horizontally. And this helps me to deal with a certain amount of with the rule astigmatism, even with a plain IPCL. Whenever you have a malorientation of the IPCL, a toric IPCL, it's important to put these lenses in place. And I just go in with the irrigation cannula. Even if you don't have a digital overlay, it's possible to just mark the amount of rotation that's necessary. It's important to remember that when you're rotating these lenses, you're not introducing any power. It's just you're redistributing the power. So it works only when the spherical equivalent of the residual refractive error is almost zero. That is a -1 with 2 diopters of astigmatism will work. But if it's just a 1.5 diopters of astigmatism that's left over, maybe it's a lens exchange that would be necessary.
So you have 1 minute remaining, sir.
Okay. Iatrogenic keratoectasia, whenever it's a well-centered cone, and as in this case, and ACD is quite adequate, which is usually these cases. Significant astigmatism, the cone is stable, you can go ahead and use it. But please remember, this will work only if the patient is having good vision with spectacle correction. If he or she needed contact lenses, whether it's toric contact lenses or rose scale lenses or spiral contact lenses, it's a decentered cone, and it's the phakic lens is not going to do anything to corneal aberrations. In these cases, best not to use these lenses. And this is just to show you a very short video of iatrogenic keratitis case where Intacs has been implanted and subsequently phakic intraocular lens is being introduced. Just to show you anecdotally a case where it lets you know that even in higher grades of IPCL refractive error, IPCL comes into play. And this was a patient with, in the right eye, she had minus 21.75 with 2 diopters of astigmatism. This case was almost 6 years back. At that time, we were just gaining initial experience with IPCL, but the patient decided to go for a toric ICL. So the residual error was quite significant. She was not willing to accept that. So we actually went ahead and made a custom-made lens made. And in this case, what we did was to go ahead and explant a toric ICL and re-implant a toric IPCL. This is not for me to say that ICLs do not work well. They are also excellent lenses, but obviously far more expensive. And one great advantage of the IPCL, I find that they are custom made depending upon the size of the white to white dimensions, as well as the size of the amount of refractive error, even in extremes of refractive error, as in this case, you are able to use this and get an optimal result. I just rushed through my research. Even in cases of nystagmus like this, where you can see a significant amount of movement, you don't need anesthesia. Once you get a hold on the eye, then you are able to go ahead and implant these lenses. And whenever this is combined with a significant amount of refractive error, presence of nystagmus per se is not a contraindication for using these lenses. It's just that you need a little bit of experience to go ahead and implant these lenses in these moving eyes, but it's definitely possible. And IPCL used as a piggyback. This is just anecdotal. I've just done about 2 cases. I think IOCare itself has excellent sulcus fixation lenses now, and maybe these are off-label usage, and maybe it's better to shift over to those lenses when you have to correct extremes of refractive error. Yes, we have great experience phakic intraocular lenses. I think it's an essential part of the armamentarium, but you have to deal with these lenses extreme care. Very recently, we had a case, young lady who bilaterally implanted one eye, did extremely well. She had an episode of increased intraocular pressure, maybe because it retained viscoelastic, significant inflammation, put on mydriatics. She had, we are treating her for pre-existing keratoconus, which had stabilized. And this is what we had now, significant inflammation, dilated fixed pupil. Very unhappy with the kind of photophobia she has to deal with. Once in a while, you come across these situations. You have to exercise adequate amount of care in avoiding all these cases. But most often, you are very happy with the ultimate outcome. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Ramamurthy, if you have a Kamal, I'll come to you next. So, Dr. Ramamurthy, if you have done UBM on a case, and a lot of time we come across such kind of scenario where UBM shows a different measurement and white to white shows different measurement. What would you go by, and how do you solve such kind of mysteries?
I think entirely we go with white to white. UBM is just an added modality. I would cross-check it with a topolizer or with a OpScan and go with that. As far as UBM measurements are concerned, quite often it's a little difficult to identify which are the points, and it's a little confusing. And most of these lens sizing has also been done based upon white to white measurements. And I'd strictly stick to at least a 2.8 millimeter anterior chamber depth, because less than that, I burned my fingers, and just doing an eye guided automy also doesn't help in these situations.
Sure. Thank you.